Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Soul Talk. And you know me already, the Dark Prophet. So yesterday, something important happened to me yesterday, and I want to share it before we start what today we're going to talk about. You know, um, yesterday while I was going home, I closed from work at 10. So on my way home last night, it was kind of dark and like the streets were kind of deserted because people are usually out by then. Then while I was going home, I was kidnapped. Somebody stepped behind me. I didn't see the person, obviously, right? He stepped behind me and put a bag over my head, and I struggled with the person, and some other people just came and just held me down. They took me off. So they took me to somewhere. I didn't know whether it's a ship or something. It looks like a ship or a car, but it's not really that. Maybe a ship, I think. Then they dragged me into the place, and they took the bag over my head, took off the bag on my head, and then when I looked around, I saw like strange creatures. Right, they were like dark. They had like triangle heads, and I was like looking at them like, who are these? I've not seen this kind of people before, kind of, right? So then one of them spoke to me. Right, he said that we are aliens and we have come to Nigeria, and because we want to accomplish a certain goal. So I was like, what goal are we trying to accomplish in the country, and what the hell is this? I want to get out of here. And they told me that they have come, they've seen the struggle that Nigerian people are going through, the struggle that the blacks in the world are going through, and they've come and rescue us. Basically, they said that there will be a change, and then that I will become the head of state someday. So that said, they showed me the plan of what they intend to do. So, and I believe that I can be head of state. So yeah, and what surprised me really was I saw black aliens. I never believed I could see black aliens. When they talk about black aliens, usually white, but to see a black alien, I was so happy. So and yeah, that is that. And so today, what we're going to talk about, the title for today is terrorism. Understanding Terrorism. That's the title, Understanding Terrorism. So, what is the first time I actually came in contact with studying terrorism was in school. Um, they told us to select some courses. So, and terrorism was the title of the course was Understanding Terrorism. So, I selected the course. When I selected it, just like then when we got to the class, the teacher was supposed to teach us. We were all panicky, like we were kind of anxious. We didn't know what to expect from the teacher. So, but we wanted to be. They were excited and at the same time panicking because it's like it's like going on a first date. You are wondering what's this girl going to look like, and will she like me? I hope everything goes right. That kind of stuff. So when he came to class, the first thing he said was, "Welcome to terrorism." And when he said that, he's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. Sorry, this is terrorism class and stuff." So, and then I really enjoyed the class because he was able to show us some things that I'm going to share here, and I believe it will help people. So, number one is, what is the stereotype, or what comes to your head when someone says terrorism? What comes to your head? Let me guess. You imagine a Muslim with a rag on his head, or a towel, or a cloth on his head, screaming "Allah Akbar." You imagine suicide vest, you imagine bomb exploding, you imagine people dead and stuff like that. And that's what people hear that's what they see whenever the issue of terrorism is raised, right? So, but let's look at so to understand terrorism, there are some ground rules that I believe very, very important. Number one is, if you win, if you engage in a terrorist act and you win, you become a revolutionary. If you engage in a terrorist act and you lose, you become a terrorist. So that's rule number one. Number two, the government and the media decide who is a terrorist and who is a revolutionary. Understand? I can do something to you, and the government can see it and say it's terrorist act. You can do something to me, and so the government and the media decides who is a terrorist and who is not. Then number three, violence is effective. Violence gets attention. Is the best way to get attention. Do you think? Then the government cannot be terrorists. I've never seen a government that will say, "Oh, our country, we are the terrorists." It doesn't happen. Governments are not terrorists. Right? They'll point finger at some other country and say these are the terrorists. So now we've gotten that out of the way. Let's look at, like I said, definition for terrorism. The first thing I learned in terrorism is there is no definition for terrorism, because terrorism is a term that is used generally, and to create a definition for it, you have to take so many things into consideration. So, but if you are looking for a definition for terrorism, I will tell you that it is the unlawful use of or violence and or intimidation, especially against civilians to achieve a political purpose. That's if you want a definition. That's that. But it doesn't cover all terrorism is about really. So the origin of modern day terrorism started in France. It started in France during the 18th century. You see, what led to the terrorism in France? They called it the French Revolution. What happened was there is a king. The king of France then was Louis the Sixth. I think Louis the 16th. Yeah, he was the king, and he was married to Marie Antoinette. So in that time, France were fighting wars after wars after wars. They were always fighting wars. So because of they were always fighting wars, it bankrupted the country. The country was in serious debt. And because the country was in serious debt, they raised taxes. So the government felt that, okay, we have to raise taxes to try and make up money to cover up the debts that we are owing. So the government raised taxes, and the people did not like that because they felt things were hard already. Why is the government raising taxes? And so that happened. And then during that period, their plants, the harvest, they had a bad harvest. The crops that they planted did not come out the way they wanted. There were constant there was envy between the people and their king and other people because they felt they were enjoying some privileges that they, the masses, were not entitled to. So all that was going on. So all these inconveniences was going on. Again, they felt the queen spent too much money on her jewelries, on her clothes, and they believed that the king was just living an extravagant life. So all these things, and again, another issue again that caused this thing was because the government were looking for money, they now deregulationalized whatever. What they did basically was the government, which was in charge of of how bread is sold, deregulated it, and so what happened was other people like companies or whatever started selling bread, and they increased the price they are selling it for. And because they increased the price, there was now scarcity of food. And because there was scarcity of food, people could not have their regular bread. And all these things joined together led to the French Revolution. And what was the French Revolution? It was when the masses said they've had enough of the king and they were going to overthrow the king. So bloodbath happened. At the end of the day, they called for the head of the king, that they wanted the king to be killed and the wife to be killed. So they took it to trial. Then they cut off the head of the king, cut off the head of Marie Antoinette, and then they felt that by doing that, it will bring about peace. But you know what they always say, it will bring about peace, but then where is peace? What happened after they did that was the person that was behind this, that was championing for the French Revolution for a change, was Maximilian Robespierre. He was one of the important people. He felt that he was championing for the right of the common man. He was championing that the abolition of celibacy for Catholic priests, there should be abolition of celibacy, and he felt that slavery should be abolished. So all these things, that's what he felt that should be changed. And so when he got in power, guess what he did? He came into power and he wanted to create an ideal republic. And what did he do? He started massacring the people. Those people, anybody that complained about anything, they killed them off. Anybody that said the wrong thing about his leadership was gone. So why is this important? When I'm talking about the terrorism, the French Revolution, you should always look at it, look at what's happening in Nigeria today and try and compare. Like, is there similarities? You see, Maximilian Robespierre promised the people if he got into power, he would change things, he would make things better. But when he got into power, what he now did was suppressing the people, punishing them to make sure that he achieved what he wanted. So he did not care about the welfare of the people anymore. What he cared about was him achieving his goal. And so that's it's kind of similar to what Nigerian politicians do, I'll make promise, I'll do this, I'll do that. When I get in there, I'll now be doing the same thing, the thing that was happening to you before, I'll even be doing worse. So so what happened was, in that French Revolution, the masses were the terrorists. That's what was assumed. The masses were the terrorists. Then when Robespierre entered power, he now became the terrorist, terrorizing the people. imposing sanctions on them, punishing them.